Suicide Required by H. K. Mayfield. Premise: A Tale of Politics, Drugs, and Safe Robbers. Canberra, ACT, Australia. On a chilly June evening in the nation's sleepy and some say boring capital, with the imagined sense and soul of a large country town rather than a city, finds itself a stronghold for the storage for some of the Taliban terrorist fighting fund cash, and a large heroin deposit bound for distribution throughout the southern hemisphere. It is being held in an underground bunker vault by a Taliban sympathizing body located at a foreign embassy, situated in the Embassy Circle enclave close to the American embassy. This information had been begrudgingly given by a terrified foreign embassy employee who had overstepped the mark when it came to the personal pleasures stakes and found himself in serious trouble with the police, and in the hands of the Australian security forces, plus with the American authorities via the American CIA. Although the Americans would rather be in control of any operations, the political implications and fallout were deemed to be too much of a risk. Australia would have to try and appear to deal with the situation itself. A counter-CIA officer would stay as an observer and advisor to the Australians at all times. But there was an uneasy feeling with the Australians concerning the attitude of the Americans, who were insisting that any covert operatives in an attempted raid on the vault be eliminated straight after the event. To leave no lead or trace to the Americans' involvement, either physically or financially, a known common practice on their behalf. At the very heart of the Australian national security system is a man who is a very highly decorated ex-serviceman by the name of Tom Barkley. In his mid-50s, tall, average weight, fit and being very smartly dressed. With a healthy sense of humor, who has risen to be a thorough and dedicated national defense officer. It is he alone who is left responsible for examining and managing any operations concerning possible action in such matters. After reviewing all of the information and evidence supplied to them by a terrified foreign embassy employee who was a 20-something-year-old, slightly stocky young man, who went by the name of Khalid. He had not officially been charged as yet with the supply of a restricted A-class drug, heroin, amongst other serious charges, but who the authorities, after hearing claims and declarations from the man, had concocted a cover story relating to the man's arrest and the refusal of bail due to the nature of the possible pending charges. It was said that he had stabbed 2 men, but he had claimed that it was in self-defense. It was an excuse to keep him in custody for his own protection while he assisted the authorities with their inquiries. These inquiries concerned corrupt officials and supporters of the Taliban, located at an official foreign embassy situated in the same enclave area as other official foreign embassies, including the United States of America. And being less than a kilometre away across the divided carriageway, Adelaide Avenue, that ran from the city to the Woden Valley Plaza shopping centre and bus terminus, and passing Parliament House. An embassy that had formally changed its name representing a corrupt foreign system, to a more neutral and unassuming one, being the location of a subterranean bank vault used to house Taliban fighting fund assets. It was reported to be housing as much as $500 million in American currency, stacked from the floor to the ceiling, and had as much as 2 tons of pure heroin stocks on pallets worth an estimated $2 billion American when stomped on and diluted by unscrupulous drug dealers. There was also intelligence that supported a whisper heard by the CIA. That an imminent large amount of heroin already smuggled into Australia was due to take place via the involvement of covert agents and drug dealers that was planned to flood Australia with the cheap, lethally strong drug. But as to where these stocks were stored they knew not. Although all movement in and out of the embassy, plus to and from the embassy, by any group or individual, could be monitored by the federal or local authorities, any official embassy representative would be ignored because of the diplomatic immunity process. Plus it had been suggested that any movement of illegal material would be regarded as such a small amount that it could be argued that it was a personal oversight on behalf of the individual involved, and therefore sanitizing the official embassy's position or involvement. The amount expected with the influx of heroin was to be a noticeable amount, undeniably an amount to justify trafficking commercial quantities charges, and would warrant any resources used in the investigatory operation, and a life sentence as punishment for perpetrators. It had been initially surmised that the imminent withdrawal would be in the most covert way or ways in smallish amounts, including using dummy runners and then brought back together as quantity at a safe location. This system had been in operation for quite some time. This virtually impenetrable fortress wasn't located under the embassy, but deep below in an area of the embassy's grounds, with only the one accessible entrance via a short tunnel system with its entrance well hidden and camouflaged. The tunnel, its entranceway, and interior of the vault could be monitored via closed-circuit television and audio signals from the embassy's interior. It is known that the chamber itself had a 360-degree, 3-meter movement and frequency detector range sensor system as part of its security system, also incorporating explosive deterrent devices and other man-traps. Tom Barkley was in a meeting deep within the FDA with members for Home Affairs and a select few others with the relevant security clearances. After explaining the situation, it was decided that no government intervention could be attributed. This matter would have to be dealt with by some other means of intercedence, but none that could incriminate the Australian government or any of its departments, officers, or agents in any way. Tom Barkley outlined a possible plan that could resolve the issue of the Taliban fighting funds. He was clear that what he was suggesting was not such an uncommon alternative, but one that had every chance of succeeding if left to run its course. When he was immediately asked by a member of the group if he meant mercenary involvement, he was quick to point out that his suggestion would not employ the use of mercenary soldiers. As this action could still lead back to an Australian connection, but to a more trusted and specific source who was fastidiously opposed to the Taliban, and an Australian patriot, being ex-military and also a highly decorated Special Forces officer, and a man who understood the term suicide required. Although, since retiring from the military the man in question had been living the life of a retired civilian, the average Mr. Nobody when in truth he was a career bank vault robber, but a man who was patriotic had always kept a keen interest in the military. The one factor that remained a political thorn in the side was the fact that there could well be some individuals in the vault at any given time, therefore if a strike was to be made, and the vault breached, the chances of these anticipated individuals being killed in the process was alarmingly high. If these deaths were attributed to civilian individuals, then these deaths could only be accepted as premeditated murder. Alas, the government could not condone, or be implicated in any way to premeditated murder. A different kettle of fish if it was a government operation, albeit covert, but this situation could not have any formal involvement or sanction. What was needed was men of true conviction who would be prepared to voluntarily fall on their sword should a failure in their mission take place. Hence the term, suicide required. In a similar vein to when America had put $25 million rewards on the heads of various individuals involved in the war with Iraq, plus numerous ex gratia grants, money for operations would have to be supplied to induce civilian help. The real budget of $25 million would be honorably footed by the American government as a sign of appreciation for Australia's help and support in the war on terrorism. This financial donation, the meeting was told, would in truth be used to fund any individual civilian operation that was deemed to have a high expectancy of being a success. This was to be Barkley's plan. He would invite an old trusted Army associate to morning coffee at Canberra's ADF headquarters and have a little one-on-one chat with him. This man was named Tony McHugh, who was of average height and build, in his late 40s, still fit and agile. Their relationship went back quite some years. Barkley and McHugh had been on some occasions during their earlier military careers, out on various counter-espionage raids together. Barkley, being of senior command, had also sent McHugh and a cell of SAS operatives on some missions. They were not held high in the possibility stakes of being truly successful. But with the mining and tunneling execution skills and the knowledge and experience they had in using explosives, these cells had always successfully completed what was referred to as the real suicide missions, even if after some they would appear to all have black faces and sporting crew cuts due to being quite close to explosives when they were detonated. McHugh had always professed that there is no such thing as a hero, only very determined individuals. What had been their most valuable asset was that they were all multi-skilled. Instead of specializing in one field, they were each versed in various areas. This was a requisition for the Special Forces' small teams and cells. A half-dozen of these men grouped would constitute quite a formidable and proficient counter-espionage force. When Barclay and McHugh were ensconced in a secure part of the ADF, Barclay had gotten right down to business. They had gone through the brief hi, hello, how have you been doing greetings, and had enough respect for each other as to know this meeting was to be of some importance. After an initial bit of banter referring to their earlier careers when they had both been in uniform, and were on a search and destroy mission of terrorist guerrilla arms dump in the first Iraqi war that had had a profound, lasting effect on both men. They had not spoken about the incident for many years, including other British Special Service operatives who were present when they had come across the recently slaughtered and dismembered remains of a poor struggling peasant farming family and their